My dad married my stepsister and they are now having a baby. My stepsister has been in our lives since she was around 3 or 4 years old. Her biological father passed away when she was just a baby, so my dad basically raised her as his own. Growing up, they were always strangely close, and to be honest, it did make me jealous because it was so obvious that he loved her more than he loved me, and I'm his firstborn child. For a little bit of context, I'm a year younger than she is, and since I was like 10 or 11, I have had people come up to me and ask me if there's anything going on between them because they just seem so close. Which genuinely seemed insane to me at the time because I could never picture my father doing something like that or being capable of that. They were constantly together though. Like, he would not allow her to have sleepovers with her friends. And my sisters and I were all allowed to have sleepovers whenever we wanted, but she never stayed the night with anyone. She never really dated anyone, and it was like an unspoken thing, but I remember she walked out with a boy out of school one day and she told me to not tell our dad about it. She then grew up to work with him and she stopped calling him dad and started calling him by his real name. Fast forward some years and she's 20 years old and her mother and my dad got a divorce. She got a different job, not working with him anymore, but she continued to live with him just like our brothers did. Fast forward a few more years and I go over to their house and I see that her bed is in the same room as his. I asked them why they did this and they said that they felt like our brothers needed their own rooms individually to themselves, so they just moved her bed into his room. Obviously, I thought that was really weird, like that's not a normal excuse, but then I later found out that that same day they actually told my other stepsister about their relationship and she got really upset and was not accepting of it at all. Several months later, I am at my daughter's birthday party and my little sister shows me a TikTok that my father had posted, and it's a love song with a slideshow of a bunch of pictures of my stepsister, and basically he's proclaiming his love for her. I was shocked and disgusted, to say the absolute least. And then I was even more upset when I find out that I'm literally the last one to know about this. My only full sibling, who should be the one that told me about this, has known for months and didn't tell me about it. And the worst part is that she is supportive of their relationship. I am very much the opposite, which seems normal to me. Like, I'm so confused. After he posted that TikTok with her, I messaged him and asked why he hadn't told me, and he literally just said IDK, and that was 3 years ago, but I've heard differing stories from everyone, and some say that the relationship started like 8 years ago, and then other people say that their relationship started like 11 years ago. But that was the last time that I talked to him. My stepsister is 30 years old and my dad is 51 years old. They got married like a year or so ago, and recently I was scrolling on Facebook and I saw that she was tagged in something, so I went to her profile page and there it is, a pregnancy announcement posted about a month ago, and I am, again, the last one to know. I'm just honestly so sick of everyone thinking that I'm the bad guy because I don't approve of their relationship. Like, I don't understand how no one in my family can see what's wrong here. This has definitely driven a wedge between me and most of my family members, and guess what? Today I got a message from my full-blood sister telling me that their child, their baby that's coming, is a girl. So that's very concerning to me. But I basically have no relationship with my full-blood sister anymore because of her supportiveness towards this relationship, and I just cannot handle it. But yeah, just needed to vent, I guess.
Am I the asshole for telling my wife that my life would be better without her? My wife Annie and I have been married for 13 years. I am 43 and she is 46. We do not have children. When we first began dating, nobody could make me happy like Anne. She always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say to me when I was down. But over the past decade or so, she has really started to show her true colors, and a lot of what her ex-husband said to me about her has begun to make more sense. For example, I have a very high-stress job. People bring me problems and I fix those problems. But when I get home, 9 times out of 10, Anne just has more problems to throw onto my plate. She doesn't work, so she's free to do anything she wants to solve said problems during the day. But lately, she has even begun making lists of things she wants me to do after I work all day. But my biggest issue with Anne is that I can't ever really open up to her about anything. Whenever I try to talk about something bad that happened to me, she'll either try to one-up me or agree with the person who wronged me. Last Friday, I had a horrible day. There was an enormous problem at work that basically all fell on my shoulders to solve. When I was crossing the street after work, I had a green signal and a bicycle blew through a red and side clipped me. The cyclist yelled expletives at me and then rode away. I thought about calling the police because it was technically a hit and run, but there was probably nothing they could do. When I got home depressed, I talked to Anne about what happened. She listened and then immediately took the cyclist's side. I reiterated that the cyclist ran through a red light, to which she responded that cyclists aren't obliged to stop. When I told her she was wrong and tried to put the issue to rest, she began frantically Googling laws. She found out that in our state, they can treat lights like a stop sign. She began triumphantly reading the law to me loudly, word for word, getting louder when I kept trying to tell her that I wasn't interested. At the end of her spiel, she gave me this incredibly arrogant look as if she was right. I just stared at her for a second and said that my life would be better without her. She got incredibly upset, shrieked at me until her voice was hoarse, and then packed a bag and left to stay with her parents. She has texted me all weekend demanding an apology, but I haven't responded. Did I do something unforgivable here? 2 weeks ago, I had an argument with my wife, Anne. This argument stemmed from Anne's insistent need to contradict me in everything I say. Anne left in a fit of rage to stay with her parents, and then kept spamming me with texts demanding an apology. A few days after Anne left, I felt something I hadn't in a long time at home. Peace. I didn't have someone nagging at me about literally everything I did. I didn't have to eat my meals in the correct order, something about pH balance that she probably saw from some brain rot creator on TikTok. I didn't have to wash my feet after getting home. I could actually enjoy myself, which is impossible when Anne is around because I found many years ago that she tends to get more aggressive when I seem like I'm either in a very good or very bad mood. I then did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to her ex. He was more than eager to talk about Anne and her shenanigans, so we met up for drinks. He and I both had near identical experiences with her. Anne is, through and through, a pretty horrible person, especially to her romantic partners. He cited irreconcilable differences for divorcing her when it was no specific event, but just a long list of terrible interactions and coming to the realization that he detested her as a person. During this time, Anne went silent on me. I used this lull in our relationship to visit a lawyer, who told me that due to the nature of laws in our state and the fact that Anne is able-bodied and educated, the chances of me ever having to pay alimony are basically zero. I called Anne at that point. She, for some reason, still expected an apology. I told her that I wanted a divorce, and she threatened to take everything from me. I said she could try, but any further contact should be done through my lawyer. I'm fully happy to split our assets fairly. I'm fairly sure Anne will agree to any deal that gives her more than half. It's just the way she is. And if it's a 55-45 split, I don't care. All I'll have to do is act like she got the better of me, and since she's an idiot, she'll happily agree. Thanks to everyone who responded in the last post with advice. Tons of you suggested divorce, which I think was what actually got me to consider it seriously.
This girl named Ellen, her name has been changed, emailed me and she was like, I have a spooky scary story time about dating apps and dating in general. So 4 years ago, she moved to Indianapolis from wherever she was living to take care of her father who was dying of terminal cancer. It's very sad time in her life. But soon after she moved there, he passed away. But she had signed a 1.5 year lease to save a little bit of money. So she just figured she was going to ride out the lease. She was working remote. It wasn't that big of a deal. And if she didn't like the city after her lease was up, she would just move. But she decided to pass the time. She was lonely, so she joined a dating app. In her email, Ellen described herself as pretty. She said she has a good personality, she has a good sense of humor, and she's really never had an issue like meeting men. But again, she had no friends in Indianapolis and no way to meet people. So she's excited when she matches with this guy named Matt. His name has also been changed, and they get to talking. Matt seems normal. He's good looking. They have great conversations. She tells him that she's there because her father just passed away and she's grieving. She's kind of going through it. But they have really, really good conversations, and she's excited to meet him. So they're talking on the app for a few weeks, and he finally says, do you want to go get some drinks? And he suggests this bar. They agree that they're going to meet at 7 p.m. So she goes to the bar at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. comes and goes. Then it's 7:15. Then it's 7:20, and there's no sign of him. Now, mind you, they had been talking every single day. So she logs onto the app to message him, be like, hey, are you still coming? And she sees that he has her blocked. She's like, okay, rude, especially because he gave her no explanation of why he ended up ghosting her. But she had done dating apps before. She knows that people are flaky. So she just decides she's going to make the best of the night. And she moves to the bar from her table and orders another drink. She's sitting there for a little while. These two guys walk in. They sit next to her, and she ends up like talking with them and the bartender. They're actually having a pretty good time for about an hour. One of the guys gets up to leave, and she's left with the guy that's sitting next to her. We're going to call him John. John was like, you know what, I think I'm going to stay. I'll have another drink with you. He orders another round. He buys her a drink. She said John was not normally her type. It wouldn't be somebody that she would normally go for, but she was like vibing with him. And she said she doesn't know if it was the drinks or if it was the conversation or if it was just like the nature of the night, but they end up hanging out for a few hours at the bar. So finally she decides she's going to call it a night. She has to work in the morning. So she says bye to John, and he's like, you know what, it was so nice getting to know you. I've really been going through it. My mother just passed away from cancer. And she just stops in her tracks and she's like, oh my God, like my dad just passed away from cancer. And so she sits back down and they end up talking and grieving together for like about another hour. Before she left, they end up exchanging numbers, and then they get to talking and they end up dating. Things were going well over the next year. She said they were grieving together, working through their issues together and separately, and it was just nice to have him around. Her lease was coming up. John suggests that they move in together. She's like, okay, you know what? Why not? It's going well. She said throughout their relationship, there were no real red flags. John was kind of a loner. He didn't really have a lot of friends. He didn't really have any family, but she was okay with that. He did travel for work, so he would leave some weekends, but he never gave her any like cheater vibes. John also didn't have any social media because he was kind of a private guy. They move in together, and he was self-employed, so sometimes he would take work phone calls and he would leave for a little while he was on the phone. One night while John was asleep, she wanted to watch something on Netflix in the living room, but when she logged onto the TV, she noticed that Netflix had been logged out. So she snuck in the bedroom, took his phone to see if she could reset the password because it was through his account. So she's swiping through the apps on his phone to find his email to like reset the password, and she notices he has Tinder. She said her stomach dropped because she would never have expected that he was like a cheater. But instead of waking him up, she opens the app because she wants to see what he's hiding, and he has a bunch of unread messages. And then she said she clicked on his profile to see what he had and like what he was advertising himself as, and she said she audibly gasped, like her jaw was on the floor, because the pictures that he was using were not of him. It was the original guy, the guy named Matt, who she tried to meet at the bar the night that she met John. John had literally catfished her. He had pretended to be somebody else, knew that she was going to be at the bar by herself, knew that she was going to get stood up, and then knew that he was going to sweep in as her knight in shining armor. Even worse, he knew that her father had passed away and then used that in conversation about his own mother to get closer to her. What's worse is she found out that he had lied about his own mother passing away, and the reason he didn't have social media and hid her from everybody was because his family was all alive and well. The craziest thing about this is that Ellen is still with John. She said he apologized. He said the reason he did it was because he knew that someone like her would never pay attention to him, and he knew that lying to her was the only way to get her attention. The reason Ellen wanted to be anonymous is because she said she knew that she would get roasted when she admitted that she was still with him after he lied about all these things to her. She says she does feel a sense of embarrassment and shame because she feels like their relationship is founded on a lie. She also said that she struggles with trust issues with John, even though they've been together for almost 4 years at this point.
Family secret my grandma took to her grave and my family found out years later. Okay, so it first starts off way before I was born when my grandpa died. And when he was on his deathbed, my family asked if there was any information that like he was hiding, and he said, not from me, but I don't know about your mother. And that was him telling that to his children. So that was my mom, and he was talking about my grandmother. So I don't really know what happened after that, but I guess they never found out that information. So when I was around 5, my grandma ended up passing away. And I think that what my grandpa said kind of just like passed over everyone's heads, and no one really thought much about it. So then a few years later, I think I was around 13, my aunt ended up signing up for Ancestry, and nothing really came up from it because she already pretty much knew everyone that we were related to until a few years later. So then one day my mom gets a call from her sister, and my mom is the youngest of 4, so my grandma already had 4 kids. But anyways, my aunt calls my mom one day and she's like, I just got a match from Ancestry for someone that could be our sister. And so my mom's kind of just sitting here like, what? Like, we don't have another sister? Like, what? So then they're trying to figure out if it's from my grandpa or from her mom. Like, obviously my grandpa had an affair and got another woman pregnant, and so they have like a half sibling now. So this was already like crazy news to me, and I was like, what? Like, I have an aunt that I never knew about? Like, that's crazy. Little did we know that this was actually my grandma's child. And so we're trying to like map it out, and she's a lot older than my siblings, so we're like, this was before her marriage. It wasn't just before her marriage. She had this kid in high school. So I guess my grandma got pregnant in high school. I don't know how this was kept a huge secret, but when you get pregnant in high school, like, it's a big deal. So she got pregnant in high school and just didn't tell anyone about it, had the baby, and gave it up for adoption. And my half-aunt didn't know she was adopted until she was 45. So her parents basically lied to her whole life, which that's what she says. Which I think is crazy, because imagine being told you're adopted when you're 45 years old. Like, what? So I'm already like jaw-dropped about this whole situation. I'm telling all my friends, I'm like, guys, like, I literally have like a half-aunt. Like, what the heck? Like, this is crazy. And everyone around me is like, that doesn't just happen. So obviously I was like, whoa, crazy family lore right here, you know? And like a huge part of this was like crazy, because we were like, how did my grandma hide this from her kids, her husband? I mean, maybe he knew, but we were just kind of like, why did she not tell literally anyone, especially when she was like dying? Because she had cancer and she knew she was dying, but she still like kept it to herself. So everyone was just kind of like confused. So yeah, anyways, we end up meeting her, and she's super nice. We have a huge like family get together, and it's just still kind of like crazy to us, because like my mom literally had a half sibling her whole life and no one ever knew. I'm still like shocked that like she had a kid in high school, and like I literally had another aunt, and this is still like something my family talks about on the regular, and just like how crazy it was. So then one day my aunt calls my mom again, and she's like, I think we have another sister. And so we're just like, at this point, we're like, no way. And so we do some digging, and we're like, okay, this is like, this truly has to be like our grandpa's child. Like, this is not our grandma's child. Nope. It was my grandma's child. Oh, and here's the best part. She was even older than the other sibling. So she had her earlier in her high school years than the last one. So she had 2 children in high school. Like, what? So clearly, all respect to grandma, but she got around in high school. Just a little bit. So you guys could probably assume, like, how shocked I was about this, because I was just like, there's 1 and now there's 2. But it's crazy because my grandma didn't just take 1 secret to the grave, she took 2. And I guess if her husband, well, my grandpa, knew about them, he took them to his grave too. So I don't really know. But yeah, the older one did end up passing a few years ago, but the younger one is still in our family. I actually was just with her this last weekend for my cousin's wedding, but it's just crazy how your grandparents could hold a secret like this and your family could never know about it. Like, you think someone would know. My grandma has 2 sisters, but she was the oldest of her sisters because her dad had to go to World War II, and so they were 8 years apart. So my guess is when she was 18, she had the first child, and maybe it got like sent off somewhere. I don't really know. I don't really know how it all lines up, but it's crazy. So the learning lesson from this is sign up on Ancestry and see who you're related to, because that's not normal. I mean, it's pretty cool that I have 2 aunts that I'd never known about, and my mom had literally 2 sisters she never knew about her whole life. So stuff happens. Crazy family lore, you know?
Am I in the wrong for telling my sister she's not allowed to bring her homemade food to Thanksgiving this year because her cooking is ruining the meal? Every year, our family does a big Thanksgiving dinner, and we all typically bring a dish or 2. My sister, who's a lovely person in every other way, insists on cooking something homemade every time. The issue, she's not a great cook. And I don't mean just not great. I mean she has somehow managed to turn classic dishes into borderline inedible creations. For context, last Thanksgiving, she showed up with her special recipe stuffing that was over-seasoned with random spices like cinnamon and cardamom. It was dry and the flavors were confusing and totally off for stuffing. Only one person took a small bite and the rest went untouched. Another year, she brought a green bean casserole that had some kind of strange, chewy texture. She later admitted that she used coconut milk and almond flour to experiment. No one wanted seconds of that either. This year, I'm hosting Thanksgiving. Since I'm responsible for putting it all together, I wanted to keep the menu consistent so that people could actually enjoy a cohesive meal. I thought I'd avoid drama by asking her to bring non-food items instead, like wine, soda, or even some flowers. I explained to her, very kindly I thought, that I just wanted to make things easy and streamlined, and I'd handle the main dishes, but she didn't take it well. She got offended and told me that I was being controlling and shutting her out of the family gathering. She then accused me of making her feel inadequate and said that Thanksgiving is about everyone contributing, not me deciding what's acceptable. I told her that everyone appreciates her effort, but that she could contribute in other ways and still be part of it. She doubled down and said that she's bringing her famous green bean casserole whether I like it or not. Now, my mom and a couple of other family members have chimed in, saying I should just let her bring whatever she wants because it's Thanksgiving and it's the thought that counts. They're acting like I'm committing a huge offense by wanting the food to be enjoyable for everyone and not have random experimental dishes that no one will eat. But I feel like I'm just trying to keep the meal enjoyable and, frankly, edible. I don't think it's wrong to want guests to actually enjoy the food, especially since I'm putting in a lot of effort to host. After this, things have escalated fast. I try to compromise, but it's already turning into a whole thing and Thanksgiving is still a few weeks away. After our last conversation, my sister was being pretty cagey about what she planned to make, so I reached out to my mom, hoping that she could help smooth things over. Instead, she got defensive, saying I'm overthinking and that it's just one dish. I told her that I wasn't sure it was just one dish anymore, especially after hearing about my sister's grocery haul, including canned oysters and edible glitter. Then my mom let it slip that my sister has been hard at work at some creative menu she's planning as her Thanksgiving surprise. Apparently, she's been telling the family group chat, which I wasn't included in by the way, that I'm being controlling and that she wants to expand everyone's palate with something truly unique. To top it off, my cousin sent me a screenshot from the group chat where my sister said she's bringing not one, but 3 dishes to Thanksgiving now. She's calling them her Thanksgiving trio experience, complete with their own place settings and little menu cards she's designing. I'm officially panicking because I have no idea what she's planning to serve, and from what I've heard, it's not remotely traditional. At this point, half of the family thinks I'm overreacting, while the other half is texting me with things like, is she really bringing glittered sweet potatoes? I feel stuck. If I try to control it anymore, I'm the bad guy. But if I don't, Thanksgiving might turn into a tasting event for my sister's avant-garde cooking. So yeah, Thanksgiving is weeks away and it's already become a family spectacle. I don't know whether to brace myself or just preemptively order pizza. Thanksgiving dinner is officially over and I genuinely don't know where to start. I feel like I just lived through a fever dream of culinary chaos and family drama, and I need a moment to breathe before I can even process everything. My cousin and I went out for drinks to dissect all of it because honestly, what happened deserves its own Netflix special. So, my sister showed up earlier than expected, which I should have seen coming. She came in like a storm, carrying not just her 3 dishes, but also this giant platter wrapped in foil, which she was clearly trying to make a big deal about. She immediately started rearranging the table, moving my dishes to the side so hers could take center stage. She even brought her own table runner and candles, saying something about setting the mood for a creative dining experience. I decided not to fight her on it, because at this point, I just wanted to get through the night without a blow up. Her trio experience was, well, let's just say it was everything I feared and more. She started with a glittery sweet potato mash that somehow managed to taste like a mix of sugar and sand. The glitter wasn't even edible glitter, it was craft glitter, which I didn't realize until one of the kids said, "This is crunchy." Then there was a cranberry and oyster relish. Yes, oysters and cranberries. It looked like someone had spilled jam into a clam chowder, and the smell alone was enough to make me lose my appetite. Finally, she brought a pumpkin curry casserole that had raisins in it for some reason, and this weird fishy smell that clung to the air for way too long. But the piece de resistance was her surprise counterpiece dish, which turned out to be a turkey gelatin mold. Yes, she took ground turkey, mixed it in with some kind of broth and seasonings, and turned it into a wobbly, translucent mold shaped like turkey. She even garnished it with parsley and cherry tomatoes to make it festive. I wish I were kidding. The entire table went silent when she unveiled it, except for my cousin, who immediately started coughing to cover up what I'm pretty sure was a laugh. Things hit their peak when my mom, who has been defending her this entire time, took one bite of the gelatin mold and just froze. She didn't say anything, but you could see the regret on her face. My sister, noticing the lack of enthusiasm, decided to go on this long speech about how Thanksgiving food is too boring and how she's trying to challenge our palates. She even called my ham and mashed potatoes uninspired, which was rich coming from someone serving glitter sand potatoes. The breaking point came though when my aunt, who's usually the peacekeeper, tried the gelatin mold and actually gagged. She tried to be polite about it, but my sister saw her reaction and completely lost it. She started yelling about how nobody in the family supports her and how we're all stuck in the past with our unoriginal food. She even accused me of sabotaging her dishes by not hyping them up enough to everyone. At this point, half of the table was trying not to laugh and the other half was just staring at their plates, probably wondering how we got here. My sister ended up storming out of the house, but not before saying something along the lines of, "You'll regret not appreciating my vision when I'm famous." She left most of her food behind, which my cousin and I quietly threw out after dinner. The rest of the night actually turned out pretty nice once the tension was gone. My dad's emergency ham was a lifesaver, and everyone agreed that next year, we're either going to a restaurant or just skipping Thanksgiving altogether. This Thanksgiving was truly something else, and I don't know whether to feel relieved that it's over or brace myself for whatever fresh chaos my sister has planned for the next year.
Am I the asshole for telling my wife she's not worthy of what she's asking for her push present? My wife and I have been together for 5 years. She's pregnant with our first right now. A few days ago, she sends me a TikTok video of a woman over one of those extremist podcasts talking about deserving some kind of push present. At first, I didn't even know what that meant, but when I looked it up, it's basically a thank you gift to the woman who brought your child in the world. The concept is and still seems very strange to me. I understand seeking appreciation from your husband for what women go through during pregnancy and childbirth, but it's the materialistic part that gave me the ick. The woman on the TikTok went on and on about how it's a body for a body, which meant the man would have to get a permanent tattoo on his lower body, give her a house and a car as a gift exclusively to her. I felt that those expectations are very entitled, honestly a little vindictive, envious, permanent tattoo part, and very over the top for my taste. The decision to bring a child in this world is both partners' decision. My wife in our case is not forced to be a mom or be pregnant, as she wants to be a parent too. I simply replied to the TikTok with laughing emojis and moved on, thinking it was the end of it, and probably thought she meant to send the TikTok as satire like, oh, look how dumb this woman is, thinking she deserves all that. She was in the other room when I reacted to the video, so she comes to me and tells me that she doesn't expect a tattoo and a house exclusively for her, but she wants me to dip into my personal savings to get her a car exclusively for her. I looked at her, almost shocked, and began laughing. I thought my wife and I had similar views on how extremist people can be, and I was wrong. I thought she was joking, and I pressed her if she was actually serious, and she got very annoyed that I thought she was joking and probably imitating the entitled woman on the reel, and she flatly said that she expects a real push present. I said that her gift is the gift of parenthood and the realized outcome of a healthy baby. And materially speaking, I'll probably get her a Mother's Day card, a day out, or some jewelry she wants, totaling under $700, but nothing more. I said if she really wants an extra car, it'll be our car, not just hers. She pressed more and said how it isn't enough for what she will go through. She kept pushing and asked me if I think she's not worthy enough. I told her she is worthy as my partner and the mother of my child, but she has to be realistic and realize that none of us, individually speaking, is worthy of what she's asking for, that she has to manage her expectations because I don't see why she feels she deserves that. It came out wrong, but I didn't mean to dismiss her as a person. She isn't speaking to me and is crying, arguing about it. I heard her criticizing me to her sister on the phone, but under no circumstances would I ever consider gifting her a car. I feel bad she is hurting right now, but I don't feel bad for giving her a reality check.
Mother-in-law's own tactics blow up in her face during a company Christmas party. It's no secret mother-in-law doesn't like myself, female 38, or my spouse, her stepson, male 36. And for all intents and purposes, we ignore her antics, and don't engage. She actively tries to keep her biological family away from us, as she hates reminders of father-in-law's marital history. But will go out of her way to try and play the long-suffering mother-in-law. She lets father-in-law try to invite us to family gatherings in public for appearances, but cancels plans and private days later. We seldom meet other than the annual company holiday party, since father-in-law and spouse work for the same company. Here is where the meat of the story comes in. The company party is always a huge event with upscale food, an open bar, live entertainment, and a DJ with a dance floor. No doubt, Ted would be there. Everyone dresses up and shows out with the higher-ups and all that jazz. Everyone is drinking and having a good time. Everyone but my mother-in-law and her belligerently hammered firstborn and his new girlfriend. New girlfriend is nice, but both seem dead set on keeping her away from us and actively trying to start fights with passive-aggressive comments. We don't react. We just keep laughing and partying it up since we know everyone there and they don't. It starts to seem like a non-issue, with them seemingly leaving us alone until father-in-law approaches us, drunk and bursting with glee, as he asks us to please join him and his family for New Year's before he leaves for the night. While we gladly accept, I instantly knew what to say when I saw her marching up, pretending to be the doting mother-in-law and telling us how she hopes we all get together real soon. All while hugging me tightly. I just wrapped my arms around that sour-faced woman, pulled her tight, and whispered in her ear, "We already got the invite for New Year's, so your wish is granted. We'll see you then." And planted a loud kiss on her cheek. Mwah! She hauls backwards, looking absolutely terrified, and ran out of there like a bat out of hell. Spouse is staring at me while I'm just grinning like a Cheshire cat, and he just laughs when I tell him what I did. Sure enough, 3 days later, my father-in-law is calling us, apologizing for having to cancel because there was a family emergency they needed to leave town for. I am dead. Father-in-law had forgotten that years ago father-in-law shared locations with us and never shut it off. They were home the entire night. I genuinely don't think we've ever laughed as hard either. Since then, we've also begun to use their same excuse of family emergency to politely turn them down.